Hi again guys, and welcome to another specific vehicle review on Forza Motorsport 7, and this time we're taking a look at a DLC vehicle in the case of Forza 6, but now a standard car in the game on Forza 7. Yet another reason why I don't buy all of the DLC cars on Forza games anymore, because many of them end up being in the next game as standard. Now in the case of this truck, I did make an exception to that because of how much I wanted to drive it on Forza 6, and I was not disappointed with that DLC. That goes for Forza 7 as well, but this time you don't have to buy the DLC, it's in the game anyway, and even if you get it on Forza 7 instead of the Forza 6 DLC, you still don't have to pay out a huge amount of money for it now, because this is a 200,000 credit truck. And all in, that's a pretty good price. So the question as far as this most unique of racing vehicles goes on Forza 7 is, how does it perform? Because with a vehicle like this, car is not really an applicable term of course, with a vehicle like this, a racing vehicle specifically, the kind of physics, the kind of performance, the kind of specs even that you can expect from a car like this, or I should say a truck like this, are substantially different to that in a traditional, say, touring car, because at the end of the day, a racing truck like this one is kind of the truck equivalent of a touring car, rather than a GT machine. They have a very similar look, all of the trucks on the grid, the basic difference is the livery, in a very similar way to touring cars. But this truck has some pretty great numbers, and in fact, in some ways, it's one of the best cars of the entire Forza franchise, and you can probably guess what those ways are. Now first of all, we have the class. And the class on this particular truck is only B level, and the exact PI is 586 to begin with. That's quite reasonable, especially when you take into account the kind of numbers that this truck is running. 1,080 horsepower, 3,685 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty hefty, and also a very hefty 5.5 ton curb weight. Now the funny thing about that is that's still lighter than the Teradyne Gurkha, which when you put it that way is pretty ridiculous, because you'd probably assume that this would be heavier, but it isn't. So when you put it that way, it's not too bad, especially given that the power on this truck is as standard 3 times higher than on a Gurkha. That's running about 300 horsepower, this has got well over 1,000, so pretty decent. But that torque is definitely the outstanding number for this truck. It's not surprising that it's high, of course not, but this is the highest amount of torque in the entire Forza franchise. That's pretty impressive. But the real question is, can this mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, 8-speed, 1,000 horsepower, 3,700 foot-pounds of torque truck perform well around the track? Because it's got the numbers, that's for sure, but the sheer size and weight could prove to be a hindrance against more traditional cars, especially more traditional racing cars. And of course, if you want to be semantic about it, yeah, of course it's at a disadvantage. It's huge, it's as aerodynamic as a building, and it's heavy, it's 5.5 tons. That's a lot no matter what way you look at it. But looking at it more objectively, rather than just saying, oh, it's a truck, of course it's slower. Well, yeah, of course it is, but it goes beyond that, because this is so much better than it very easily could be. In fact, the handling on this thing is among my favourite in the game. This is one of my favourite vehicles on Forza 6, and now on Forza 7 as well, just to drive for the pure fun of it. Can it beat everything in a straight line? Of course not. But you can get about 150 miles per hour out of this thing. That's not bad. And even around a long technical circuit such as here at the Nordschleife, it handles pretty well. And the handling is a complement to the straight line performance, because with a truck like this, or a car that is similar to this, and there are some that are, you don't really have the straight line performance to waste time on corners. You've got such a lack of straight line performance in comparison to a car, especially a car with similar numbers, that it has to be good through corners to at least be competitive at all, really. And that's the great thing about this truck. Although against something like a sports car, certainly not a supercar, or anything above, say, a low-level touring car, it's going to struggle. But against vehicles which maybe could underestimate, and more so drivers that could underestimate this, it can be a deceptively good vehicle. Now, I can't blow it out of proportion just because of how much I love this truck. In the grand scheme of things, most players, apart from driving it in the career mode races, probably won't use this truck that much. Probably won't find a huge amount of use for it, even. But for those of us who do, myself definitely included, this is in my top 5 favourite cars of the entire Forza franchise, then you definitely will get a huge amount of use out of it. This is a totally unique vehicle, and this is one of those cars which reaffirms that Forza is trying to be as diverse as they can in terms of not just the racing world, but in their vehicle lineup in general. And that's something which Gran Turismo has always been known for, especially in the older games, and it's nice to see that Forza has that same quality going for it, especially now that the focus of Gran Turismo is moving more away from those vehicles and going into a more strict conventional class system of racing with some road cars in there. But in the grand scheme of things, both games, of course, both franchises have a great selection of oddball cars, and I would say that this is one of the standouts as far as Forza goes. One of the other standouts, a vehicle with, let's just say, a very long wheelbase, and you should be able to guess what that is going to be also featured in a review later this week. But for now, if you do get the chance to pick up this truck, I would definitely recommend giving it a chance. If you already like the idea, you're going to love this thing. If you're skeptical, give it a chance. The handling is a lot better and it's a lot more fun than you might expect. But that's it overall for this particular review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.